Are you new to the mmorpg genre and think it's too late for you to jump into one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mmorpgs of all time? Maybe you felt the urge to come back home after all these years, but did not find the courage to do so. This video will tell you all about why you should actually consider jumping back to Azeroth, a world created so many years ago and still going strong after all this time. They say no king rules forever, but this one has surely been challenged by many, yet still sits at the top after so many years existing on this market. What is the secret to its success? Today, however, we will focus on what this game has to offer for new and returning players, so let's dive in. But first, some context is very much needed here. Of course, you're right, this is more of a Star Wars channel, but this game has a special place in my heart, being my first MMORPG experience, and seeing how greatly the last video about Star Wars MMO was received, thank you by the way, I decided to continue expanding on my passion for games, especially MMORPG genre, and make a series. Is it worth your time? Where I talk about basic stuff and interesting things that may keep you occupied during your playtime sessions. So with that out of the way, let's dive straight in to the world of Azeroth. World of Warcraft, or WoW in short, was released in 2004 as a groundbreaking MMO. It had a giant world you could explore alone or with your friends, and you could play in either of two factions constantly at war with each other, Horde and the Alliance. You can hazard a guess which one I played, and post it right down in the comment section. Across the years, the game released multiple expansions, the most iconic one being Wrath of the Lich King, in which the player base reached the highest peak this game has ever seen. Since then, it has been on a bit of a downward spiral, but is still attracting a large portion of players. So what exactly contributes to its ongoing, let's call it, success? The first factor to consider is nostalgia. Some people have been playing this game for 19 years, when they were kids, and even now, when they have kids of their own, they want to go back to the good old times when it was only fizzy drinks, Doritos, and World of Warcraft. Some players come back to look up their characters and progression they made during those years, bask in the glory of their achievements, unique items, legendaries and mounts. And others just want to play the game that brought them so much joy in the past, not minding all the changes to its original core. The next thing is that there is plenty to do in WoW, and sometimes, without a good plan on what you want to achieve, you might get easily sidetracked and end up lost. Let me break down for you the most important activities. Let's split it up to two sections: current endgame and legacy content. The endgame is tied to the newest expansion currently released, being Dragonflight. In here, we travel to the recently uncovered Dragon Isles, where we help defeat foes to save the world. Pretty normal WoW stuff. This expansion feels different, however. On the surface, it is what players always wanted, a laid-back expansion without any forced systems like borrowed power to grind, making you hate yourself for not logging in every day, but with a lack of an iconic big baddie, like Lich King was, for example, or the Legion invasion. There isn't much to keep players invested. It is a very convoluted topic to break down, and I will leave that for a separate video. Now, without further ado, what is there to do at level 80? First, we have dungeons. 5-man instances that require group coordination in order to complete them. Come in 4 difficulties: normal, heroic, mythic, and mythic plus. They rely on the Holy Trinity: tank, healer, and a DPS. Side note, with patch 10.15, Blizzard released a support class called Augmentation Evoker, which completely changed the Holy Trinity and will change this game forever. But I digress yet again. When it comes to first 3 difficulties, it's nothing special, but Mythic Plus offers players an entirely different mode to play, with rotating weekly affixes which change the way enemies behave inside. For example, having more health, exploding on death, or leaving nasty debuffs. It is a lot of fun, but on the other hand, a very competitive field that has its own tournaments. When you are clearing plus 20s and above, there is little room for mistakes, and your group composition and coordination has to be spot on in order to complete the challenge. Moving on to the raids. Hands down the best group content in this game. Even if sometimes other parts of the game were lacking or were outright bad, raids were always dominant part of World of Warcraft. In here, we enter instances full of bosses and additional monsters that we have to deal with in order to get the best gear this game has to offer. They also come in 4 different difficulty modes. Looking for Raid, or LFR, which you can queue for easily using a group finder tool. Then we have Normal, Heroic and Mythic, the last one being only for the sweatiest of the sweats. I'm kidding, of course, but not really though. Mythic difficulty, each time a new raid is released, has a special event around it that is called Race to World First, in which guilds across the world compete to get that first kill on the final boss of the raid. Something spectacular to see the top players destroy bosses on the highest levels, and then come back to your guild and cry when you wipe on normal mode. Oh well, maybe one day I'll get that cutting edge achievement. Going forwards, we have the world content, and this is again where this game shines, especially in Dragonflight. Since its inception, the world in World of Warcraft was where it was at. The leveling in vanilla, exploration, finding out hidden treasures and quests was something amazing. In the modern version, however, it changed drastically, when expansions care more about new eras and zones connected to that current expansion, and forget about the old ones, which is a big shame. But now we have world quests on a daily and weekly timers. We have events such as Primal Storms, Time Rifts. There are dragon riding races, which are incredibly fun. You can fill up reputation bars for many different factions, get into crafting and create stuff for other people to achieve that artisan fantasy you always had. World bosses and time-gated challenges await you as well. Basically, if you wanted to, you could spend your entire day doing just that. I think that's awesome. Last, but definitely not least, I present to you Player versus Player. And unlike in Star Wars The Old Republic, about which we talked about last week, link in the description below, this mode also has its own tournaments and a big ranked scene, with some of the top killers called Rank 1 players. In here, they fight inside arenas in 2v2 and 3v3 compositions, as well as battlegrounds. There are of course other challenges and world PvP, so if you like hunting your opposite faction while they quest, you can do that too. The combat has its own unique style, and to be honest, this might be one of the most fluent currently on the market, although it may not be for everyone. PvP fights can be really long and exciting, and watching skilled players who spend years perfecting their craft is very enjoyable. Moving on to the legacy content. This is where casuals like myself are spending a lot of time. These are the previous expansions, which don't matter that much anymore and are used mostly for leveling alts and gathering old gear. They matter though if you are a transmog collector. Transmogrification allows you to change your character's current armor they're wearing into one you acquired from farming old content. You can show off your character's newest drip during the raid night for everyone to see your dedication to grinding. The same can be said about mount hunting. Mounts in WoW were always the ultimate flex. The more rare they were, the biggest respect the player deserved for putting up with a daily or weekly grind for it. To paint a quick picture of how hard it can be sometimes, some players to this day struggle with getting Invincible mount, which is Lich King's horse from Icecrown Citadel, which released in 2009. That is a 14 years grind for one mount. Think about that. Of course, there are other iterations of World of Warcraft that you can actively play at this very moment. In 2019, Blizzard released Classic, which was unchanged first version of the game, practically the same as it was in 2004. Since then, these servers progressed through the expansions like the Burning Crusade and are currently on Wrath of the Lich King. Classic WoW is getting more popular each day, and I recently joined in on the hype to feel the nostalgia once again. So you can expect a future video relating to this topic. Playing on vanilla servers which are called Classic Era now, brings you back to the foundation on which this game was built. Leveling was long and tedious, gameplay sturdier, but so much more satisfying. Every drop was a big dopamine boost, and every level brought big upgrades to your character. Creme de la creme. There are also a lot of people who try on the hardcore challenge in Classic. In this community-driven mode, you have to level your character from 1 to 60 without dying a single time. Otherwise, you have to delete that character. And let me tell you, leveling in vanilla was a very hard endeavor. Not only it required a lot of hours, but enemies were a lot more difficult, and a single mistake, pulling one more mob or being cocky, could get you wiped from the map in an instant. WoW always allowed for an incredible immersion. You became your character as you progressed through the world of Azeroth, and this feeling is only being enhanced by the hardcore challenge. Recently, Blizzard has announced official servers that will have this mode implemented, so you can jump in and test your skill to see if you survive. As you can see, this game has a lot to offer, being nearly a 20-year-old title. From the current retail version or classic, you can try whatever you fancy. Is it worth your time? Yes, I believe it is. If you want to forget about real-life problems for a couple of hours of playtime during your session, the World of Azeroth offers just that. From challenging game modes in modern version to a slower progression and immersion of classic, there is plenty of experiences to live through. I didn't even mention guilds and drama that can occur. And of course there is also Classic Plus on the horizon. But that I will leave for the future uploads. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for new content each week. Oh, and for the Horde.